Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Rivera. I'm the hearing examiner presiding over today's case. The date is December 4th, 2025, and this is case SEZ2025-00015. It is a special exception request for consumption on premises in conjunction with an agritourism operation. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, all evidence and testimony must be taken under oath. So if you intend to speak, if you could please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide is the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the way that we're going to present today is first we're going to hear from the applicant. They're going to present their request in the case and call any witnesses that they may have in support of that request. Following that, we're going to turn to the county staff. They're going to present their review and recommendation in the case. They are recommending approval with some conditions. After that, I will open up the public comment period. So if you've completed a card, that's your opportunity to come to the podium and place any comments that you may have into the record. Following that, we will come back to the applicant and the staff for their closing comments and any rebuttal that they may have. I am the final decision maker in this case, so any comments that you have do need to be made today. There is no time limitation to the comments that you provide, but there is only one opportunity to speak. And once the public comment period is closed, it does not open again. So please take notes as we go through so that you can make the most of your time at the podium. With that, we can begin whenever the applicant is ready.
You stand up here.
Yes, please. Good afternoon.
Hi. Thank you to Ms. Rivera and the other county staff for being here today. My name is Mike Cintron. It's my wife, Llewellyn, my daughter, Angelina. We're lifelong residents of Lee County. That's 44 years for me. Llewellyn and I are high school sweethearts. We've been in business together since 1999. From the beginning of our business models are centered around commitment to the highest standards of quality, integrity, honesty, and we live and work by the golden rule. Sky's Farm and Garden is no different. I'd like to address the general public and the neighbors that have come out today in support or opposition. I hope after this presentation, any concerns that they have will be addressed. For now, I'm going to hand it over to my daughter. She's the director of Sky's Farm and Garden and the prospective venue. She will be able to go over this presentation in detail. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Angelina Cintron, and I am thankful to everyone who is here. I do have this for you. I believe you need a copy. There's one extra copy in black and white.
Thank you. And this is a copy of the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I can take that as well.
Anybody else wants?
Okay, thank you. And I will label that as applicant exhibit 1.
Alrighty. As I mentioned, I'm thankful for everybody's time and attention, and out of respect for that, I hope to make this presentation as efficient yet thorough as possible. My clicker going. All right. Here is the outline of what I plan to discuss today. After a brief introduction, I'll outline what our request is, provide information on the subject property. I want to discuss a few items from Florida law and the Land Development Code and establish why this request is lawful and necessary in this case. And then I'll delve into the review criteria for granting our request and how we meet each of those. To introduce us, I'd like to say 7430 Musketeer Lane was my childhood home. I lived there from the time I was 7 until I moved away to the University of Florida for my undergraduate degree. Growing up on a farm homestead was a beautiful experience, and the property has always been an open door for joyful gatherings, wholesome human connection, and fellowship. It's also been a refuge for those going through difficult times. Over the years, we've fostered children, allowed in mothers in crisis situations and their children, housed people post-hurricane, and I say all of that not to say that we're great people or anything, but to express that the genuine character and spirit of that property, the metaphysical nature of it, is a safe place, a refuge, a gathering place for fellowship. Over the years, we've even had multiple family weddings on the property, After my brother's wedding in 2023, we received the most questions of whether or not we would ever allow outsiders to use our property and our farm for their gatherings. My parents are very busy business owners and didn't really have the capacity to entertain such an endeavor at the time, but it always lingered as something we could offer our community. Over these years as well, the property has had a rich agricultural history. From the time we moved there to even beforehand, it's been farming goats, chickens, and pigs. That's some family photos where we felt it necessary to include the goats, and a youth group trip to our farm at the time. Honestly, we were doing agritourism before we knew what it was. Around 2016 to 2018, however, we decided to transition from farming animals to farming plants. And Sky's Farm and Garden, our plant nursery, named after our late Catahoula Labrador farm dog Sky, was born. Here are some more current pictures of our nursery. I came on early this year. I graduated from the University of Florida College of Agricultural and Life Sciences in May of 2024, and for a few months was in the process of a major career decision. Should I return to the family business, which I had been involved in during high school, or should I go into a different field? Early this year, I decided to join the family business and have been hard at work at both this special exception request and also bringing fresh energy to Sky's Farm and Garden nursery operations. I got us a website, all those good things that young people love to do. I'd also like to express that I plan to be in Lee County for the rest of my life. I plan to raise my children here, and I'm excited for what being a part of a small business gives me the opportunity to contribute. Agritourism very much included in that. With that being said, our formal request statement is as follows. While we hope to have many agritourism events that do not have alcohol involved whatsoever, we do wish to provide guests the opportunity to consume alcohol responsibly during their gatherings and are thus requesting this special exception. I do apologize for the cutting off of that text on the screen. I tried to be cognizant of the no content here, but messed that one up. In essence, we want to share our farm and its beauty, its character with more members of the community. And I'm very excited about my future role in that. I hope that we can create something that is attractive to young people in Lee County. As a young person who hopes to have children soon, I want families to be able to come and partake in what we have to offer. We also hope to, through the business of our agritourism and our plant nursery, be able to engage in donating our space to certain uses for free. I used to host Bible study on the property, and I hope that we can offer that to churches to do in the future for free. And also, I studied horticultural therapy, a few classes at the University of Florida. I really believe in that therapy modality, and I hope that we can make the other side of the business profitable enough that we have the ability to be generous and to donate the space to professionals wishing to do that at a low cost. Now for some facts. The subject property is at 7430 Musketeer Lane. The strap number is as follows. It is 9.65 acres and zoned AG2. It is in the future land use open lands category and has a current agricultural exemption, which I'll show on the next slide. It's currently primarily used as a plant nursery. The surrounding property character will be discussed more at length later, but is it a mixture of developed and undeveloped agricultural and residential uses, as well as some undeveloped industrial land separated by a drainage canal to the east. Here is our agricultural exemption map. As you can see, all 9.65 acres are encompassed within our current agricultural exemption. To establish why this request is lawful and why it is necessary, I'd like to touch on a few statutes within Florida law and also some items of the Lee County Land Development Code. I say this obviously not to educate you as the hearing examiner, but to convey our understanding and familiarity with these, and also for the sake of the public present today. The first is Florida Statute 193.461, which establishes the standard and process for annual agricultural classification by a Lee County property appraiser, well, in our case, Lee County. The subject property, as shown before, is currently agriculturally classified in its entirety, and it has had an agricultural classification in some form since 2006. Statutes 570.85 and .89 regulate agritourism. I'd like to touch on two of those in particular. 570.86 defines agritourism activity. One category defined therein is ceremonial. Within this category is an event type we do hope to host. It is not the only event type we hope to host, but it might be the most controversial, and that is weddings. Weddings have a stigma that I'd like to address head on. We do not intend to become a place of debauchery, wild partying, or alcohol abuse. It is contrary to our morals. It is contrary to the future we want for our property, our family business, and the surrounding community. 570.85 reads, a local government may not adopt or enforce a local ordinance, regulation, rule, or policy that prohibits, restricts, regulates, or otherwise limits an agritourism activity on land classified as agricultural under Statute 193.461. Agritourism activities on our bona fide farm that is agriculturally classified are a by right use of the land. The same statute mentions that this subsection does not limit the powers and duties of a local government to address substantial offsite impacts of agritourism activities or an emergency. We are very sensitive to the fact that Lee County has a role, a duty, and a power to protect the public, and that this hearing is an essential part of that, and we hope to be as cooperative and compliant with that as we can be. Thus, we've familiarized ourselves with some portions of the Lee County Land Development Code, in addition to the ones here, but I'll touch on these. The first few sections define and regulate agricultural uses, agritourism, and land classification. Section 34-1711 permits activities on land classified as agricultural. 34-2 defines agricultural uses, plant nursery, and agritourism activity. Agricultural uses includes nurseries, and a plant nursery means any lot, structure, or premises used as an enterprise for the purpose of growing or keeping of plants for sale or resale. Agritourism activity definition is identical to that on the previous slide within Florida Statute 570.86. The next sections establish that temporary alcohol permits are already available to farms at an annual frequency of 12 events. Section 34-1264C1C says weddings and other special occasions at clubhouses or farms classified under agricultural. However, 34-1264C3 mentions that if 12 permits are sought per year, more than 12 permits are sought per year for a specific location, then the location must obtain a permanent alcoholic beverage special exception, which is one of the reasons why we're here. Also establishing our need for a special exception are some of these that I'll touch on, and the director's authority to review and grant such exceptions is also established here. Section 34-1264A1J permits limited food and beverage service when accessory to an agritourism activity, provided that that activity is not within 500 feet of a dwelling unit under separate ownership, is the key here. We are within 500 feet of multiple dwelling units under separate ownership, triggering the need for the special exception. Also, triggering the need for the special exception is the reality that we plan to provide outdoor opportunities with the alcoholic beverages, which per 34-1264A2A, because we're not covered by subsection 34-1264A1, we'll need the special exception thereto. And section 34-174B establishes that the director has the authority to review special exception requests and grant them, and establishes the review criteria and a requirement to ensure no adverse impact on properties within 500 feet. Lastly, LDC section 34-145C3 specifies those review criteria. Each of these I will address in the following presentation to convey how we meet them. First is the Lee plan. And I apologize, some of my formatting did not carry over properly. We need to provide that our request is consistent with the goals, objectives, policies, and intent of the Lee plan. The first of those that I'll discuss is the future land use. As you can see, the property is open land, and many of the surrounding properties are also open land or rural. There is a potential future industrial development use off to the east that contains some conservation land patches. Each of these land use are governed by the policies shown, and I've included some excerpts from those policies to discuss. For open lands, agricultural and low-density residential uses are permitted and are encouraged, as well as in the rural category. Open lands specifies 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres, and rural mentions that these areas are not to be programmed to receive urban-type capital improvements. Under industrial development, I'd like to highlight that it's the county's policy to prevent encroachment of incompatible uses, such as residential, into areas designated industrial development. And the conservation lands policy is shown. We do not anticipate any negative impact on the nearby conservation lands within the industrial development. Furthermore, our intended use of the subject property is compatible with the future land use of all the other relevant future land use properties set forth in the Lee plan, as our continued agricultural use with new accessory agritourism poses no issue, and we propose no increase in dwelling units. I'd also like to mention that I believe should the adjacent industrial area ever be developed, our plant nursery provides an advantageous property to be on the fringe of the open lands distinction, as our business model as a plant nursery and with agritourism accessory use is particularly non-injurious to the neighboring potential future industrial use in a way that, should we have developed it as residential, may not be as clear-cut. Goal 9 discusses agricultural land uses, and the intent is to protect existing and potential agricultural lands from encroachment of incompatible land uses, as well as the inverse. So protecting urban type areas from encroachment by agricultural areas. Within Goal 9, Objective 9.1 creates an agricultural overlay that is governed by Policy 1.6.7. However, the subject property does not qualify for inclusion in the agricultural overlay, as it is 9.65 acres, and the surrounding properties are a mixed development of residential and agricultural uses. Thus, the entirety of it does not make up a non-contiguous parcel of greater than 100 acres in size. Nevertheless, when it comes to Goal 9 and the related objectives and policies, we are consistent. The last is Lee Plan policies 4.1.1 and 4.1.2, which have to do with potable water and sanitary sewer connection requirements. Developments that produce or that have 30,000 square feet of gross leasable floor area or more, or produce 5,000 gallons of sewage per day, are respectively connected to, are required to respectively connect to potable water or sanitary sewer. As we do not meet these criteria, we are consistent with the Lee Plan without that connection. We would like to mention here that we do plan to have restroom trailers for events exceeding 50 guests to promote a positive guest experience and to help efficiently meet guest needs. The next criteria is environmental. We need to protect, conserve, or preserve environmentally critical and sensitive areas and natural resources where applicable. The most significant measure we're doing in this regard is our existing landscape buffering gardens. They provide a wonderful visual and auditory barrier. They protect surrounding properties and environment. And for our nursery, they showcase our plant material and maintain a lot of parent plants for both vegetative propagation and seed propagation. In the past on the property, we made the positive environmental change of removing all exotic vegetation. We had a lot of Melaleuca when we moved there in the early 2000s, and at the time preserved several mature indigenous trees, which we plan to continue to preserve. We follow all best management practices for chemical and fertilizer use, as well as irrigation in our nursery, and we encourage the cultivation and sale of native plants. Staff report mentions a condition that says if the applicant proposes an improvement to land as defined in Land Development Code Section 10-1, a development order from Lee County will be required. At that time, the landscape must be in substantial compliance with the site plan stamped received on September 10th, 2025. Attached here to is attachment J. Here's our site plan. We are happy to comply with that condition, and we are in support of our own landscape buffering. That's why we have it there. That's why we've had it there for years. I'll zoom in a little bit. I apologize for the scale. This is the existing landscape buffering. There are some calculations of the density of that buffering in the different zones that it's broken into. And here are some photos as well. To the left, you're looking at the upper left photo, you're looking at the property line, the west property line from within the COP boundary, which I'll show in a coming slide. Here on the bottom left, you're looking at the west property line from outside of our property. As you can see, a lot of vegetation there. These are also west photos of the buffering, very dense, very mature plantings. Here is a photo in the south direction past the COP area. And here are some more for northeast and the southeast zones.
Just, can you pause for 1 second? So when you did that, I did a site visit yesterday because the administrative code mandates that we do those on every case, and I like to do them prior and after if I can to really orient myself. So I noticed in the entrance, there's essentially 2 points of entry into the property, and I think those are both shown here, but they're a little difficult to see exactly. So I think they're shown in pink. If you could go back to the highlight, I want to orient where these photos are being taken. Okay, so if I'm understanding, this actually needs to be shifted. Is that correct for a northern?
So I can explain it. It's fine. So the compass is not shown on this slide, but you can see it here. Unfortunately, when I made the site plan, we made it kind of based on our flow of the property and rather than on north, south, east, west being oriented like on a map. So this is north, that's west property line. So when I show the images, this image is that west property line.
But when you're saying the CE, are you saying the COP area, because you keep using that point of reference, are you using the property boundary along the most northern or western property entrance?
I can skip ahead to that slide.
This might help. So when you came into our property, these are the 2 entrances. That's the nursery back there. If you go right here, this is where the photo was taken, facing this way, that way, and from the street facing this way.
Okay, thank you. That helps. I did both. I went through the immediate entrance at first and did kind of a circle through that, and then I exited and went through the nursery so I could see that as well. But that's not included then, you're saying, in any of this. So like when it talks about, it was a little confusing in the materials because there was mention of a proposed pole barn that I think is under current permitting now for a building permit, but there's listed here a future pole barn ag use only. So is that one the one we're talking about, or is it the one that's in gray?
Great question. So this pole barn is the pole barn that was built under the commercial building permit from early this year. It is primarily agricultural use, however, we do hope to use it for our accessory agritourism events. This pole barn up here is unrelated to our COP and our agritourism use, it's really strictly nursery. That's why I haven't really elaborated on it, and that's why we didn't pull a permit for it either.
No, and I'll hold my question for staff on that, but my concern about condition 8 and the way that it's written is if that's a future building that you're going to.
That building is
anticipate.
already existing.
That's already existing, because it said future pole barn.
Yeah.
I didn't go that deep into the
It's
site.
because of the timeline between when our first application was submitted and projects that we've been working on over the summer.
Okay, so you don't have any additional physical improvements planned at this time to the property?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The next two criteria I'd like to discuss in tandem are compatibility with existing and planned uses, as well as that our request is not injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental to public welfare. I'm going to analyze these based on both the existing and planned use of the subject property as well as the surrounding properties. I won't delve too much back into the future land use, as I feel that was adequately addressed during my discussion of the LEED plan. However, the current land use will be addressed by what I'm calling our disruption mitigation plan. Here are, it cut off a substantial part of this. I'm very sorry about that. The rest of it is on the exhibit in your hands. It's just summarizing, according to the Lee County Property Appraiser website, the uses of the surrounding properties. The east is the undeveloped industrial area. The north, west, and south are a mixture of developed and undeveloped residential and agricultural. All right. Our disruption mitigation plan contains these items, starting with the boundaries of our COP area. This is a helpful slide because it shows that everywhere we intend to allow guests to move with alcoholic beverages is contained within our landscape buffer. We also saw staff report condition 2 and are providing this example mock-up of the signage we might use to comply with that staff report condition. Here we have some examples of our covered area floor plans. This is the pole barn you asked about with the commercial building permit. We would set it up like so. This is a different existing structure. Here I want to highlight part of our noise mitigation plan is to have any amplified sound be projected toward our property and to have large backboards behind any amplified sound producing items to help further contain the noise. Our noise policy on any contract or waiver language will be something substantially similar to this. Venue premises is located near residential units and or zoned accordingly by Lee County for noise regulations to apply. If client's event creates a disturbance due to high noise volume, venue team reserves the right and full authority to ask client's DJ or live music presenter to turn the entertainment down and or off. If repeated disturbances are created at venue's sole discretion, clients may be expelled from the premises or the offending noise will be ended. In the event of disturbances to the point of expulsion, no portion of the fees paid by clients under this agreement will be refunded. Clients will also be solely responsible for any fines or fees associated with noise ordinances. All outdoor music must end by 10 p.m. Vehicles, roadways, and parking. We understand that we live, that our property is at a privately maintained road. We have always been contributory members willing to pay our portion, and that will not change. We are in fact willing to pay a portion of road maintenance that is proportional to our use, provided that is assessed in a fair and appropriate manner, given that there are also other businesses on that same road. Our roadway damage policy will hopefully help visitors to our agritourism activities be cognizant of their interactions with the surrounding property in and out. It says clients will be responsible for any damage caused to the property during or related to the event beyond ordinary wear and tear and shall pay for the repair of any such damage with their credit card on file. This includes damages to neighbor. Yes, I'm sorry. I've been told I talk fast. Would you like me to start that excerpt over?
Yes, it says clients will be responsible for any damage caused to the property.
Yes. during or related to the event, beyond ordinary wear and tear, and shall pay for the repair of any such damage with their credit card on file. This includes damages to neighboring roadways and properties, including but not limited to mailbox damage, lawn damage, and litter. Safety. We understand a concern of drivers being on the road under the influence and plan to encourage the use of Uber, Lyft, charter buses, and taxis. And we will never penalize a client for leaving a car there overnight so that they can take a safe ride home. We believe our proximity to many lodging options, especially down Alico, help to make Uber and Lyft and other rideshare services a very viable option for people to use. We will also not tolerate overservice to intoxicated persons, which I'll show more in our alcohol policy upcoming. Last item in this section is our parking plan. We plan to have attendants that facilitate efficient entry and exit of guests so that everybody can be self-contained on the property in the most efficient manner possible. We also plan to self-contain our overflow parking. Again, I'm very sorry about this formatting, but here is a closer look at our parking plan. Pursuant to LDC section 34-2020B, we've provided 1 space per 100 square feet of floor area for 9,000 square feet. There's 90 spots. This parking plan shows 93, and we have an alternate overflow parking plan for at least 150 spots. According to my research, industry standard for some of these event types, most of these event types would be 1 spot per 2 to 2.5 guests maximum. At a guest count maximum we're intending to limit ourselves to of 200, we are exceeding that industry standard in addition to being compliant with the Land Development Code.
What is the internal pedestrian circulation plan? Because it seemed, again, when I was doing my site visit yesterday, I didn't see if there was a clear pathway that connects the properties that you're anticipating for these kind of events.
So I might be best if I go back to the site plan to show you that. Or probably show it here too. Oop. There we go. Okay. So it's hard to tell because of the landscape, but this is a pathway beneath that tree there that permits entry into the property.
It's a paver pathway.
It's a paver pathway.
Okay.
Clear path forward.
And it'll be clearly demarcated because it didn't seem like the property, I'm going to essentially say east and west or north and south, however you want to orient yourself. It's a little unusual in that location. Did not seem to accommodate any parking. All of the parking, it seemed, would be on the commercial nursery portion of the site, was my expectation.
Yes.
But there will be a safely lit path so that everything will be contained on the property within your 9.65 acres and nothing is spilling out.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Guest behavior and crowd control. This will start with our client vetting process. We are not desperate to book any and every person approaching us to have a private event at our nursery. Should someone approach us wishing to host a wild party until the wee hours of the morning, we will respectfully refer them elsewhere. We additionally plan to pre-ticket most of our public events. For public events, we will have waivers containing strict and clear policy language regarding acceptable and unacceptable behaviors, particularly surrounding alcohol.
And what might that look like? What would a public event be? Weddings are pretty clear cut, those are private, but what would a public event be that you would be holding here?
Yeah, so I have lots of ideas about this. For example, I'd really love to be able to have a daytime event that's very family friendly, kind of like a family picnic moment where there's maybe a wine and cheese vendor and everybody's spending time outdoors in the garden. I'd also love to have plant crafting events, cultivation workshops, and stuff that's geared toward adults who like those creative activities and to be in nature, but might want to sip an alcoholic beverages while doing it.
But the size of that would not be the same magnitude of the 200, but it sounds like you're not
Correct.
describing something that's going to be attracting the masses at a frequent basis onto the site? I'm just trying to get a flavor
see.
for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely address that. I can skip ahead here. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. What I'll address in the next slide is that such events we're hoping to host are going to have a lower guest count maximum. And as mentioned, they'll be pre-ticketed. I plan to advertise, this is what we're having. Please sign up before you arrive. Invite the people on the property, let them know what's happening, be there to host the entirety of it, and have a wholesome and enjoyable agritourism event. Does that answer that a little bit?
It does. I'm just, it's unique, and agritourism, as you've said at the beginning, these are very unique in what we do in this room for any kind of zoning action, because we are inhibited by the state in a lot of ways of what we can do. So really the focus has to be on the off-site impacts. That's where everything is that we can focus on. So the concern when I read this was, if you're having public events, that sounds like when you're saying 200 people, the county can't really impose a condition on the limit of the folks that you're going to have on the property, because that's not really an enforceable thing that the code enforcement could actually act upon, right? So that's why you didn't see that condition, I'm guessing, and staff didn't propose that. They proposed these other conditions that are quantifiable that can be enforced. But having a code officer come out while one of these is happening and do a count to make sure that you're within that number. So we can't really put parameters on that. So it's really getting to the heart of the conditions that we can impose. What you're already entitled to these activities, as you said. What you're asking for is the consumption on premises portion of it. So we can't tell you that you can't do what you're doing absent any code violations that might be occurring that I'm not aware of. So that's the reason I'm asking these questions is just trying to get a sense of what you're really intending to do with it and how the addition of alcohol is going to impact the community immediately surrounding you. That's the lens that I have to look through with what I can control.
That's helpful context, thank you. Within our alcohol policy, this is an example from our contract language. However, our waiver language will contain something similar. I'd like to read just a portion. Vendors shall exercise due care in serving alcoholic beverages and must refuse service to any person appearing to be under the age of 21 or any person who appears to be intoxicated. Identification and proof of age must be requested from any person who appears to be under 21 years of age. Alcoholic beverages shall be removed from anyone believed to be a minor or from any intoxicated person. We will have zero tolerance for unlawful behavior, and pursuant to the requirements for a 13CT liquor license, we will always have food and non-alcoholic beverages available. For our event frequency and scheduling plan that I now understand is not conditionable necessarily, I just still like to convey our intent because despite all of these efforts that we're making to ensure that we're protecting the surrounding environment, we'd like to further limit ourselves to these frequencies. For things like a wedding or a dinner, those would be the 10 p.m. end time events, and we were actually only planning on having the 10 p.m. end time be for events that were private, such as those, and those to have a 200 guest count maximum and only take place a Friday or a Saturday 24 times per year. As for other daytime events, like the picnic I mentioned, or like a garden party themed bridal shower where mimosas are served, ideally for us, there would be not a frequency limit set on those, and they could occur any day of the week during normal business hours and would end around sundown. And those would also be a smaller guest count. The last category is cut off on the screen. I do apologize again for that. And that would be evening events, a work dinner, and we'd like those to have a guest count maximum of 150 and end by 8:30 p.m. We'd be willing to only host those on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at a frequency of 24 per year. Overall, this does bring our hours of operation technically to Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 8:30 p.m., Friday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. However, I'd like to reiterate it's not our intention to have that happen every day of every week. The last criteria is regulation compliance. And here, I'm really just gonna, in short, repeat what I discussed on our early slides, which is that our principal use as a plant nursery is by right permitted in the AG2 zoning district. As a plant nursery, we're classified as agricultural use, and by the Lee County Property Appraiser have been confirmed as a bona fide farm on agriculturally classified land. Thus, the agritourism activity is permitted. Up to 12 temporary alcohol permits are already allowed to be applied for weddings and other special occasions on farms. However, we do need the special exception due to event frequency, dwelling unit proximity, and outdoor consumption. We also, another related regulation that we will be in compliance with from the Florida Division of Alcoholic Beverages and Tobacco is that 13CT license requires that 51% of gross food and beverage revenue is from the sale of food and non-alcoholic beverage, because we plan to have non-alcoholic beverages and food at all COP events. This should not be an issue. In conclusion, we hope our application and this presentation have conveyed our desire to contribute positively to Lee County at large, our genuine commitment to the neighborhood and public welfare, and our adherence to the review criteria. We thank you for considering our request. And with that, I give up the floor.
Thank you. Is staff ready to proceed? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Before we get started, I would like to provide a copy of my presentation as well as some letters of objection from the neighbors in the community. What I have is up until Wednesday around 8 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Just pre-labeling, so I've got the housekeeping out of the way. Thank you. Staff Exhibit 1 was pre-labeled. That was the staff report. And then I received the 48-hour notice, including the affidavit of publication, so that's pre-labeled as Staff Exhibit 2. So Staff Exhibit 3 will be the presentation from today, and then a composite Staff Exhibit 4 are the letters that you just provided. Thank you.
Before we get started, for the record, my name is Brianna Schrader. I'm a planner with the zoning section of community development. I have previously been qualified as an expert witness in the Lee County Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan and wish to do so again today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. What I presented here today is a special exception, SEZ2025-00015. It is a request by Mike and Llewellyn Citron, who are the owners and founders of Sky's Farm and Garden, to allow consumption on premise through a 13CT alcoholic beverage license in conjunction with agritourism events. That will be offering limited food and beverage service within 500 feet of a dwelling unit under separate ownership. The request, if approved, will permit the indoor and outdoor consumption on premise of beer, wine, and liquor for guests participating in agritourism events being held in areas within the existing garage, pole barn, and areas outside of these buildings designated as the guest-free movement zone, shown on the aerial overview provided by the applicant and shown here. Land Development Code Section 34-653 permits consumption on premise within the Ag 2 zoning district through the administrative approval process or through special exception. LDC Section 34-1264A2A2 requires a special exception for any establishment within 500 feet of religious facility, non-commercial school, a child daycare center, a park, or dwelling unit under separate ownership. The proposed areas for consumption on premise are located within 500 feet of a dwelling unit under separate ownership. Therefore, a special exception is required pursuant to LDC Section 34-1264A2. The subject property, 7430 Musketeer Lane, is approximately 9.65 acres in area and is located north of Alico Road, west of Michael G. Rip Parkway, south of Briarcliff Road, and the subject property also has an approved agricultural exemption through Lee County Property Appraiser. The subject property is located at the end of Musketeer Lane, a non-county maintained road to the northwest, and abuts a 60-foot drainage way known as Fiddlesticks Canal to the east. The subject property is within the open lands future land use category in accordance with the Lee Plan and is zoned agricultural, more specifically within the Ag 2 zoning district. Now when it comes down to the surrounding area, properties to the north, south, and west of the subject property are zoned agricultural, more specifically within the Ag 2 zoning district, and are in the open lands category in accordance with the Lee County Comprehensive Plan, and portions of properties to the north are within the rural future land use category. Lee County records indicate that the area surrounding the subject property is both developed with residential use and undeveloped. The property to the east of the subject property is zoned industrial plan development and is in the industrial development category according to the future land use map of Lee County. The industrial plan development is located across from that 60-foot drainage canal known as Fiddlesticks Canal, with a conservation easement directly abutting the drainage easement on the east side of the drainage way. Provided here is additional information on the subject property. As stated before, the property has an approved agricultural exemption and has been operating as a plant nursery since 2018. The subject property currently has several buildings on site that are to serve the bona fide agricultural use and are exempt from certain state and local government codes pursuant to Florida State Statute 604.50. In 2025, the applicant received a commercial building permit to construct a 4,800 square foot unenclosed pole barn to support the existing plant nursery and utilize it for future agritourism events. This permit has since been inspected and a certificate of occupancy has been issued. This new pole barn is located where the red box is shown on the screen and will be shown later on in the presentation in the site plan. None of the buildings are being utilized as a dwelling unit. Land Development Code Section 34-145C3 establishes the review criteria for special exception requests. The following slides provide how the applicant has met the review criteria. Policy 1.4.4 of the Lee Plan notes areas designated as open lands are extremely remote from public services and are characterized by agricultural and low-density residential uses. Commercial and industrial uses are permitted in this category in accordance with the standards in the rural category. Policy 1.4.1 of the Lee Plan establishes the standards of the rural future land use category, which keeps areas within this future land use category predominantly rural, with low residential development, agricultural uses, and minimal non-residential uses that are needed to serve the rural community. The property is currently developed and the primary use is a plant nursery, which is a bona fide agricultural use that aligns with the character of the surrounding neighborhood and aligns with these Lee Plan policies. Additionally, the intent of agritourism activities is to be accessory to the bona fide agricultural use by promoting and supporting bona fide agricultural activities through events offered to the general public for recreational, entertainment, or educational purposes, to view or enjoy activities, including farming, ranching, historical, cultural, civic, ceremonial, training and exhibition, or harvest-your-own activities and attractions, which is consistent with these Lee Plan policies. For agricultural land use, Lee Plan Goal 9 establishes objectives and policies that protect existing and potential agricultural lands from the encroachment of incompatible land uses and to discourage the introduction or expansion of agricultural land uses in future urban areas. Objective 9.1 of the Lee Plan places existing active and passive agricultural uses that are zoned ag, have an agricultural exemption from the property appraiser's office, and are located outside of areas anticipated for urban use during the life of the plan on an agricultural overlay. However, non-contiguous properties less than 100 acres in size will not be included in this overlay. Lee Plan Map 1G, Policy 1.6.7, which establishes the agricultural overlay, shows existing active and passive agricultural operations more than 100 acres in area located outside of future urban areas. The subject property is approximately 9 acres in area, and although the properties located to the north, south, and west are within the agricultural zoning district, they are non-contiguous and developed with non-agricultural uses. Therefore, this is not qualified to be within the agricultural overlay. The subject property is currently operating as a plant nursery, has an agricultural exemption from the property appraiser's office, and hosts agritourism events to support the existing bona fide agricultural use, which aligns with Florida Statute 570.85, which is consistent with the SLE plan goal, objective, and policy. Lee Plan Standards 4.1.1 and 4.1.2 require any commercial development exceeding 30,000 square feet of gross leasable floor area and generate more than 5,000 gallons of sewage per day must connect to a public water system and a sanitary sewer system. The subject property is currently operating as a plant nursery, which is a bona fide agricultural use, and intends to host agritourism events that are permitted by Florida State Statute 570.86 and Land Development Code Section 34-1711. Subject property is now required to connect to public water and sanitary sewer due to the site not generating more than 5,000 gallons of sewage per day, and the buildings located to the site are not exceeding 30,000 square feet, which are also not available to be leased by another business. The applicant will be providing portable restroom trailers for events with a guest count of over 50 people, and it will look like as shown on the screen, which is consistent with these Lee Plan standards. Environmental staff has reviewed the request, and pursuant to the environmental staff memo, the plant nursery is designed to showcase various plant material in its natural state so that customers may understand how certain species would fit in their landscape. The site plan provided by the applicant includes existing landscaping that screens the property from the single-family residence to the west and Musketeer Lane to the north. The site plan also shows the minimum and maximum buffer width with corresponding colors to depict the existing landscaping. The request does not indicate that improvements to land are being proposed with a request for consumption on premise. However, to ensure that the existing vegetation is consistent with the site plan and to accommodate the possibility of future improvements to land, conditions are recommended by staff for the applicant to obtain the applicable development order permit and to remain in compliance with the site plan provided to staff in this request.
On that point, that condition that was drafted, the way that it's drafted, I asked the question earlier, but is the intention to trigger that requirement only if the development is within the COP area, or is it for the entirety of the 9.65 acres?
Just within the COP area.
Okay, thank you.
The subject property is located within the open lands future land use category, which are areas that are extremely remote from public services and are characterized by agricultural and low-density residential uses. The surrounding properties to the north, south, and west of the subject property are zoned agricultural, with some sites being developed for residential use and others being undeveloped. The site has been developed as a plant nursery since 2018 and has been hosting agritourism events, which are permitted on land classified as agricultural pursuant to Florida State Statute 570.85 and LDC Section 34-1711. The special exception request for consumption on premise of alcoholic beverages through a 13CT license in conjunction with agritourism events that will be offering limited food and beverages services is compatible with the existing plan uses. Staff did receive concerns from concerned property owners in the neighborhood regarding impacts from the proposed agritourism events, including the alcohol being served and additional traffic generation and the use and wear of Greystone Lane Swallowtail Lane, and Musketeer Lane, which are classified as non-county maintained roads as shown here. Florida Statute 570.85 prohibits local governments from establishing or enforcing existing agritourism regulations that prohibit, further restrict, regulate, or otherwise limit an agritourism activity on land classified as agricultural land under Florida Statute 193.461. These concerns were brought to the applicant's attention, and to help mitigate concerns regarding the roadway systems, the applicant's request statement provides that the applicant will pay their part of the costs associated with maintaining the portions of the non-county maintained roads that will be utilized for these events. In addition to this, the applicant has provided a detailed request statement that provides a disruption mitigation plan, which demonstrates how the site is currently set up to minimize noise impacts, which is subject to the Lee County Noise Ordinance and is enforced at all times by the Lee County Sheriff's Office. Also, this plan provides how events will be parked, crowd control, guest behavior, and event frequency and scheduling. The applicant has provided that the proposed hours of operation will be from Sunday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. and Friday and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. The applicant has provided a proposed site plan depicting a detailed layout of the buildings intended to be used for agritourism events and the indoor and outdoor areas guests may utilize, including the office building, which will be open for guests to use the restroom. Provided here is the exterior area to be utilized for agritourism events and show where guests may be permitted to go with their drinks. The next slide, as shown here, shows the interior layouts of these buildings. As mentioned previously, the principal use for the subject property is a plant nursery, which is classified as an agricultural use, both of which are defined in LDC Section 34-2. The use is permitted by right in the agricultural zoning district pursuant to the use regulations table established in LDC Section 34-653. Agritourism activity is permitted by right in all agricultural zoning districts and is governed by LDC Section 34-1711 in line with Florida Statute 570.85. As previously mentioned, this use is consistent with and accessory to a bona fide agricultural use, which allows members of the general public for recreational, entertainment, or educational purposes to view or enjoy activities including farming, ranching, historical, cultural, civic, ceremonial, training and exhibition, or harvest-your-own activities and attractions. For a property to qualify for an agricultural exemption, the Lee County Property Appraiser's Office, Agricultural Assessment Department, has to determine that all or part of the land in question is being used for bona fide agricultural purpose, which means good faith commercial agricultural use of the land pursuant to Florida Statute 193.461. The agricultural classification requires inspection and renewal annually. The applicant has provided the approval map from Lee County Property Appraiser, which establishes the entire site is approved. Pursuant to the Florida Division of Alcoholic Beverages, the 13 CT Series alcohol beverage license is reserved for caterers and requires the licensee to provide prepared food at any catered event and requires 51% of gross revenue or more to be from sales of food and non-alcoholic beverages. Skies Farm and Garden seeks approval to offer alcoholic beverages through a 13 CT license to guests of agritourism activities in conjunction with limited food and beverage service as defined in LDC Section 34-2, which is limited to members of the general public when accessory to an agritourism activity permitted in accordance with LDC Section 34-1711. The applicant has provided to staff in the request statement that food will be offered at any agritourism activity that offers alcohol through a licensed catering service. The applicant has provided a detailed breakdown of the number of events they wish to host per year, which is also provided here on the screen. LDC Section 34-1264C1C establishes weddings and other special occasions at clubhouses or farms classified as agricultural under Florida Statute 193.461, may obtain a one-day temporary alcoholic beverage permit for the sale of alcohol beverages at the specific location where an event is held. However, LDC Section 34-1264C3 only permits 12 temporary alcohol beverage permits to be issued per year to a specific location, including those in conjunction with a temporary use permit. If more than 12 permits are sought per year for a specific location, then the location must obtain a permanent special exception for consumption on premise. With the applicant requesting more than what is permitted in this code section, a special exception is required. To help mitigate concerns regarding parking for events that generally are considerably large, like a wedding, the applicant has provided a parking analysis which details how the applicant intends to park these events in an efficient manner that will not disrupt the surrounding neighbors. The applicant utilized the parking calculations for meeting halls, clubs, and other places for group assembly not otherwise listed, which is calculated at a minimum of 1 space per 100 square feet of total floor area pursuant to LDC Section 34-2020B, which establishes parking requirements for non-residential uses. According to the calculations provided by the applicant, the minimum required parking spaces are 90. However, the site plan indicates that there will be at least 93 spaces available. To accommodate for potential overflow parking for larger events, the applicant intends to provide at least 150 spaces to ensure sufficient parking spaces are provided for the guests. In addition to this, the applicant will provide parking attendants to mitigate buildup of cars upon arrival, ensure guest safety, and minimize disruption to the surrounding neighborhood. Staff will also be recommending a condition for the applicant to provide the parking attendants for events larger than 94 people.
Where did that number derive from? Because I noticed in the applicant's narrative, they proposed more than 50 people they were going to have attendance on site, so I wasn't sure where the 94 came from.
Staff took it from how many parking spaces are just available on the site plan. So if they were to exceed what is already readily available, then we will require them to get a parking attendant. But if that number is recommended to go down to require the parking attendant, staff would be in agreement with it.
Thank you.
The recommended conditions are provided here and are as follows. Approval of this request is limited to the indoor and outdoor consumption on premise through the 13CT beverage license in conjunction with agritourism activities. The sale or service of alcoholic beverages must be offered in conjunction with food and non-alcoholic beverage service. The location of indoor and outdoor consumption on premise is limited to the areas shown on the aerial overview for potential alcohol service areas. The boundaries of COP must be clearly posted on the physical property to demonstrate the COP limits to agritourism participants. The hours of operation for indoor and outdoor consumption on premises are limited to Sunday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 8:30 p.m., and Friday and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. The property must maintain a continuous agricultural exemption from the Lee County Property Appraiser's Office. Any lapse of the agricultural exemption on the subject property renders the subject to special exception null and void. Appropriate approvals will be required to restore the COP use on the subject property. All parking must be located on site. The location of attendee parking must be substantially consistent with the site plan. For larger events with the attendance exceeding 94 people, parking attendants must be available on site. Music and live entertainment are subject to the Lee County Noise Ordinance, and all outdoor music and live entertainment must not continue past 10 p.m. Speakers must be oriented away from any residential dwelling unit under separate ownership. And if the applicant proposes any improvement to land, as defined in Land Development Code Section 10-1, a development order from Lee County will be required. At that time, the landscaping must be in substantial compliance with the site plan.
Just getting back to that again, it's
Yes.
a little problematic for me because, again, we're on ag property, so they're exempt from a lot of the permitting requirements that would typically, so I want to be careful not to overstep into that realm. So if it's tied, there's a rational nexus if we're saying that if there's something new within the COP area because we're limited to the existing site plan, is that the intention of that condition?
Yeah, it's essentially as of right now, staff acknowledges that they aren't doing any improvements. but for the specific COP area, if they intend to do any improvements that requires a limited development order, then they will be required to get it. But if it does not require the limited development order per Florida state statute, then they will not be required to get it. So they would have to talk to Development Services staff.
Okay. It may just be a point of clarification then, just to identify a little clearer and make that distinction a little sharper, that we're only talking about the COP area referenced on the site plan. Thank you.
So to conclude today's presentation, the request to allow consumption on premise for a 13 CT alcoholic beverage license in conjunction with agritourism events that will be offering limited food and beverage service is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies set forth in the LEA plan. The request as condition is compatible with the existing and planned uses and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental to the public welfare. Approval of the request will have no impact on environmentally critical area or natural resources and will be in compliance with applicable regulations. The application has been assessed in line with the approval standards for a special exception as set forth in LDC section 34-145C3, and staff has determined that the request as conditioned meets the review criteria for a special exception and is available for any questions if you have any.
I believe I asked them all as we went through, so I'm done for now. Thank you.
So, thank you.
Okay. We're going to take a brief break before we start the public comment, so we'll break just for 10 minutes and be back at 2:40. Okay, we're back on the record. We're going to start with the public comment period. I did administer the oath at the beginning, but if you walked in after I did that, if you could just indicate it when you come to the podium so I can place you under the oath before you put any comments into the record, I would appreciate that. And I will call the cards in the order that I have them. We're gonna go as far as we can. We do need to conclude at 4 o'clock today, so some alternative dates have been provided to both of the parties. If it looks like we're gonna bump in against that date, then we'll continue it and there'll be another date for that. So we'll get as far as we can, but again, there's no time limitation in what you have to say today. We want to make sure we hear everything that everyone came here to say. The first card that I have is for Eden McIntyre. You wouldn't like to speak? Okay. The next card I have is for Frank Leckler.
My questions were answered.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next, I have Bruce Johnson. Good afternoon.
Hello there, how are you? I'm Bruce Johnson, and I live at 7251 Musketeer Lane. I'm very close to this project, and I'm concerned about multiple things. First of all, I paid for 1,100 feet of blacktop myself, okay? Nobody's helped me, nobody's maintained it, okay? Second of all, there's a 2,000-foot straightaway coming out of their drive. If you were out there yesterday, that's gonna be a drag strip, okay? My house is the fence with the little pickets on top. I'd like to ask who I'm supposed to call when somebody's parked in my ditch or laying in my yard or peeing on my fence. Who do I call? What number is going to be available to me? The quiet life you grew up with is no longer going to be. But you're also going to disrupt all the other kids that might want to grow out there and have peace and quiet. It's not going to happen. I've had multiple people say, why don't you do a bed and breakfast? Great. I don't want to disrupt my life. I have it there because of my peace and quiet. Okay? And this will disrupt the community. You can tell that not everybody could show because of work. All right, so we do have a serious problem. I just want to bring this to the attention too, before I forget. June 4th, I got a courtesy letter. Said in that letter that I would receive another letter when the zoning hearing was going to be. Well, I received a letter, it was written on November 7th. I received it on November 17th. However, the letter was for a tower, 150-foot tower, 45 minutes from here. 15 or so people out here got the same letter. We all was not represented correctly with the zoning. They made a big mistake. Had I not been working on the fence and noticed the zoning sign, none of us here would know about the hearing today. So we got a problem here. If you'd like a copy of this, I would like to leave one for you. We've been neighbors and friends as long as they've been there. Very hardworking people they are. I am too. My life savings is in that house. Been married 51 years, and we intend on enjoying that property. I think it's going to end. I'm going to be 71, and I don't need to fight people every Friday night because they're hooting and hollering over there and driving crazy up and down our road. There's no street lights. There's chuck holes off the side of the blacktop all the way out. I don't see anybody repairing that. I think we got a disaster happening here. I appreciate this young lady. Go, girl. That's great. However, you picked the wrong place to do it. That's my opinion about it. I can't state all the laws and all of that, but I do know what I've done there in the past, and I do know what's going to happen. I really would wish you'd consider that. I do want to say one thing. I'm glad it's not going in next to your house, because I wouldn't wish this on anybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming today. The next card I have, I apologize to anybody if I don't say this correctly. I believe this is it Leona Jaffrey? I can't tell if that's a Jen, is there? Okay, thank you, and I apologize for not stating that correctly. Okay, the next one is for Chris Busby.
How you doing? I'll come up.
Also some extra cards right there for you.
Good afternoon.
How you doing? My name's Chris Busby. I live at 7101 Green Acre Lane. We bought out there because my daughter rides horses. She barrel races, and we own the property. We ride up and down the street on our horses. It is a privately maintained road. I don't know how Mike's going to keep up with the traffic coming in and out of there. It is going to be an issue. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. The next card I have is for Dennis Paper. I apologize. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, Dennis Pappner, live at 7050 Green Acre Lane. And I agree with so far Bruce Johnson on all that. The traffic's going to be ridiculous. It's going to be unsafe. Everybody knows if there's alcohol, you're going to have drunk drivers. There's S-curves down there on Briarcliff, and they're going to be in the woods. We have people walk our roads out there. It's dark. They walk for exercise every night. It's a narrow road, and somebody's going to get hit. There's no doubt about it. The signage for this event and for the zoning was appalling. If I hadn't seen the sign like 5 days ago, I wouldn't know about this. The sign is at the end of a private drive. It's over a football length away from the road. It's almost ineligible even to read. You can't read it unless you drive down that private drive. You know, the business traffic alone that Centron Landscape creates on that road is enough as it is. There's multiple trucks, multiple vehicles for employees. People come in and drop their employees off and go back out, come back in the afternoons. There's a massive amount of traffic created by Centron's nursery as it is. I don't know how many businesses you're allowed to run out of one property, obviously more than one, but it's too many. It sets a bad precedent to allow people to put alcohol in our neighborhood. There's been enough signage. I know for a fact, I talked to a woman just yesterday. She had no idea any of this is happening, that it was being built, that it was already zoned and allowed, or the alcohol. Nobody, the majority, I would say, people that live in Briarcliff know nothing about this, which is wrong. This is detrimental to the whole neighborhood, and it's at the expense of the neighborhood for a private business to profit. And I think it's totally wrong. I don't know when or how the zoning was to have even allowed this to get through. We had no idea. I just lived right around this corner from them. Had no idea any of it. I knew there was tons of trucks hauling dirt in for the projects of whatever they had going back there. That went on for days on end, for weeks. The traffic, they mentioned coming in from Musketeer. There's tons of traffic that's going to come past my house, which comes in off of Alico Road, which is a dirt road on Dusty Lane. Google even shows people that's the direct route to access. The road's terrible. And like I say, nobody pays for anything on the road. Anybody that's done any hole patching has been me. Nobody even stops by and say you need a drink of water. So that's where the road maintenance is. They're gonna benefit financially off of the detrimental treatment that they're gonna do to the neighbors. I don't know if there's anything we can do to stop this. I think it's wrong. It's extremely disrespectful for the neighbors, even if it is legal. And they don't even live there. They moved out, so, you know, they're not dealing with it. This could be a nightly thing every day of the week. Their intentions of not to have that many, but there's no guarantee it won't be. If somebody comes along and says, we want an event, and the opening is there, are they going to refuse it? Are they going to turn away money and business to keep the amount of visits to the place down? No, that's not a business proposition. They're going to accept anybody and everybody that comes along, and we're going to pay the price for it. With the drunks coming in and out, everybody knows that when there's alcohol, you're going to have drunk drivers. And your intentions are maybe to not have them drunk, but they will be drunk. There's an S curve at the beginning of Briarcliff Road. There's plenty of vehicles wind up in the woods there already without alcohol sales in our neighborhood. And I pray that you will deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card I have is for Elaine Johnson. Fran Papner. Good afternoon.
I'm Fran Papner, Dennis Papner's wife. Live at 7050 Green Acre Lane. I also, I agree with everything everybody has said. I'm very worried for our neighborhood also, for the exact same reasons my husband has said. I know I was trying to listen to her. I know she said she had goals and morals, and they had helped a lot in the neighborhood. One, I've never seen them do anything with the road. I'm just going to put that out there. But, I'm not out there all the time, so I could be wrong. But I'm worried that if people are kicked out for being drunk because I don't know if they have security or what they're going to have, to like manage these sort of things. But, then they're set out into our neighborhood to just go wherever, So, right now what they're saying is that there's hotels, Uber and Lyft and all that, which is very nice. It didn't look like adequate parking to me, but I've never been back in their area. But if they have that many people, are they going to be out on the road, when they start, having these people parking for them? But anyhow, so their cars could just be sitting out on the road, on that throughway that, it would be their property, but we would, have to drive past it. And if there's hotels on Alico Road, they are way down by I-75. They're not like, and in order to get to Alico Road, you do have to go past our home on Green Acre Lane. You do have to go down a dirt road on Dusty Lane. It's not kept at all. And then you finally get to some paved roads back by the cement company and things like that, because it is industrial. There's no lighting going that way, and, it's dangerous. I just, that they feel like they're helping people to be able to drink and get somewhere safe, but it's not safe for our neighborhood or to get to wherever they're going. Anyway, I just think that if they kick people out of their party because they're drunk, they go out into our area, and then we have the problems that they're getting rid of in their function. And I was glad to hear that it ended at 10 p.m. because that was one of my questions. And that's all I have. Thank you.
The next card I have is for Lisa Blennon. Good afternoon.
Hi, I live at 16171 Snapdragon Lane. As a very close neighbor to this venue, I wanted to be on the record with support for this business. I believe the Cintron family to be interested in creating something new while maintaining a commitment to the lifestyles of their neighbors to ensure a peaceful coexistence. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you zoom out just a little bit so I can get a sense of the network a little bit? Thank you.
Let me know if you don't want me to go anymore.
Thank you. The next card I have is for Mary Olinger. No, not speaking? Okay. Robert Olinger. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I live at 7151 Green Acres Lane. Lived out there 32 years with my lovely wife, Mary. We come to a place here where we're trying to do something right, and I appreciate that. But my concern is the customers that are going to come out there are going to be put in a situation where they're going to be at risk because of it being a very remote, very dark. There's no signage there now. I mean, we talk about doing some benefits. How about putting some street signs there that have a speed limit? There are 5 90-degree turns between Alico and Briarcliff. They need an arrow on it indicating to help these people. All right? Litter control. Who's going to address that? Presence of police. Anytime you're serving alcohol, there should be a police presence there. At least, it doesn't matter if it's 1,000 or less. There should be that taken care of. Also, where does all the event people park? The vendors of food, beverages, things like that. You've got, 150, 92 places. Whatever the event is, you've got to have support staff for that. The people that are trying to park, the attendees, and for the guests that are there. So I just don't think there's been a lot of thought put into this whole thing and the impact. I'm not against it, and I think it affects all of us, and the people that they're trying to be a customer. You want it safe for everybody, and it's not for anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card I have is for Tracy Hayden. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. For the record, Tracy Hayden. We reside at 16280 Snapdragon Lane. Basically, I appreciate everything that you've done, Centrons. I think that you went over and beyond what you needed to do. However, it really boils down to, I oppose the special exception for the consumption on premises. Basically because of privately maintained neighborhood roads in a very rural setting. If you were there, you saw that we have, many 90-degree turns, not just on Briarcliff, but at Musketeer and Swallowtail, there's a blind corner there, basically, where you really can't see if somebody's walking or riding, and it's dangerous as it is. So I'm concerned about that. We have no lights out there, except for the periodic street lights that people have out by their houses. Their own personal lights. There are no street lights, and there are no sidewalks. It is a very narrow roadway back there. And Bob and some others have pointed out too, it's not just from Briarcliff that people would be coming to the venue from. It's also from Alico Road, because I've had many people recently even be brought through Alico to get to our house, which is very close to the venue. We have families out there. Like I said, it's very neighborhood. It is a neighborhood. They walk, they run, they bike, they push their strollers, they ride horses all along these roads. It's kind of the last place, if you will, in town, without going out to Alva or Buckingham, that we have that. We like that lifestyle. Most of us have been out there for 30-plus years. And I know things change. And again, I don't have an issue with what they're trying to do, except for the consumption on premise. I think that this is not the appropriate location for the potential of 150 vehicles of potentially impaired drivers to be driving for the reasons that I already outlined. I'm not sure if I would be more comfortable if it were just buses that were bringing people in for those type of events. But I'm worried about that many potentially impaired drivers on the road, on our neighborhood road. So for that reason, I am opposed to the special exception. And I also agree, we all received, or the people within the 500 or whatever feet received the notice in June that this was happening, but none of us received the follow-up notice. And I do think that's a procedural issue, because it was kind of off our radar, and we all, the letter in June said you will be notified when the hearing is set, and we didn't receive those notices. So that was a little irritating, if you will, but I think that's a procedural issue that probably needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Ken Hayden. You don't want to speak today? Okay. Amy Tebow. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Amy Tebow with Retzel. I represent the owners of 7001 Green Acre Lane. I do have a presentation and some exhibits and copies of those for all involved. Thank you. Thank you. And a copy of my presentation. Would you also like this? And then, thank you. So I am also here in opposition of this case, albeit I have a slightly different way of viewing this. Where's the?
Oh, it fell on the floor earlier. It's underneath there, I believe. One of the speakers knocked it down.
There it is. Thanks. Okay. So I've identified some issues with this request that should preclude approval of it. First of all, there's no competent substantial evidence that COP is requested in conjunction with an actual agritourism use, and that is a condition precedent to approval of the COP request. I'll also note that the analysis of this particular request is based on an erroneous interpretation of state law, particularly 578-85 subsection 1, and substantial off-site impacts haven't really been addressed. There's also no competent substantial evidence that the request is compatible with existing and planned land uses. In the same vein, there is no competent substantial evidence that the request is not detrimental to the public welfare or adverse to surrounding properties. And finally, this request is inconsistent with the LEED plan because non-residential uses in open lands designation refer back to those non-residential uses that are available in rural lands, and they're minimal and only needed to serve the rural community, and COP is not a need. So I'll dive into this. Got a little bit of a presentation, so we'll jump into it in greater detail. But burden of proof is competent substantial evidence. We know that DeGroot v. Sheffield is a black letter law on this particular issue. It's evidence that would be sufficiently relevant and material that a reasonable mind would accept it as adequate to support the conclusion reached. So what is not competent substantial evidence? layperson testimony, layperson opinion evidence that is not supported by facts. In the same vein, even expert opinions that are totally conclusory in nature and unsupported by any discernible factually based chain of reasoning, it's also not competent substantial evidence. So the petitioner does have the initial burden of showing that the application meets the criteria for approval. And review of the application documents and sitting here today, that burden was not satisfied. So here are some examples of things that are inconsistently addressed. So there's really just a blanket assertion that the underlying accessory use here is agritourism. There's very little to back up exactly how this is agritourism. Consistency with the Lee plan. They don't address that COP is actually, it's truly a commercial use. And again, it's not needed to serve the rural community. Compatibility with surrounding uses. We did not hear from an expert on behalf of the applicant in regard to compatibility. And because of the erroneous interpretation of 570-85, staff did not really address compatibility or really offsite impacts. And they have not given competent substantial evidence, again, to show that this is not injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental to the public welfare. In fact, if you actually read through the narrative, they acknowledge that certain factors, certain characteristics of this type of development can be disruptive, can create issues. The response to that is providing a disruption mitigation plan, but it can't be incorporated into the special exception approval. There's nothing to enforce, it's not binding. So I jumped ahead of myself. So I'll first jump into the agritourism use. So as already discussed, the applicant provided a definition of agricultural activity, which yes, of course, the underlying property has to be classified by the property appraiser for bona fide agricultural purposes, commercial agricultural purposes. That means good faith agricultural use of the land, not a sham. It's defined as the pursuit of an agricultural activity for a reasonable profit. And I'll note that wholesaling and retailing, those are not agricultural purposes. And I'll also note that the property appraiser's office makes this determination based on the characteristics of the land and the physical use of the land as of January 1st of the tax year. So I won't go back into this, we've already gone over it. So buildings under 570-87, Florida statutes, buildings can be considered part of agritourism, and the underlying lands won't have their ag exemption yanked so long as the building, structure, or facility in which that activity is conducted is an integral part of that underlying agricultural operation, so the nursery. We have not seen any evidence to demonstrate that that particular event area is an integral part of the agricultural operation or that it will remain that way. So that's one of the challenges here. There's also a dearth of law interpreting Florida's agritourism rules, as we are all aware. But I did find an unpublished opinion from the Attorney General's office that I have provided as Exhibit A. That was issued in response to an inquiry sent by Sumter County, actually in regard to whether an agricultural property that wanted to establish a wedding venue was per se agritourism simply because they had a bona fide agricultural classification. And what the Attorney General's office opined is that the first step is for the PAO to actually classify those lands as bona fide agricultural, but then the next step is for the county's community development department to determine whether that particular use is or is not agritourism. And only if the county's community development department interprets that use as agritourism does that then become a protected use preempted to the state. So I just went through that. The AG opinion provides that considerations in making that use determination by community development, it comes down to, is the use an agricultural related activity? Is the use consistent with a bona fide farm or other bona fide agricultural operation? Are the structures or facilities in which those agritourism activities taking place, are they integral to the agricultural operation? And specifically, the letter addresses looking at any structures that are primarily intended for the general public and whether they were constructed after 2013 when the agritourism laws were adopted. And so these are all, there are other things that they can factor in as well, but that's what they came to. And I'll note that the AG opinion specifically states that the county actually has a duty, the Community Development Department has a duty to make that interpretation. They can't exclusively rely on the property appraiser's classification of the land. So the county also has some agritourism requirements that are consistent, in my opinion, with the Florida statutes. But specifically, they're permitted if they are directly related to agriculture and if they promote the intent of the agritourism statutes. They further refine the definition of agritourism activity. It's actually slightly different than what the Florida statutes provides. It provides that it needs to be an accessory use to an agricultural use, which means that it's a use that's customarily incidental and subordinate to the nursery. So I reviewed a couple of other agritourism uses that have gotten COP approval, just to compare it, just to see what was going on. The first that I reviewed was Southern Fresh Farms. And I'll note that in that particular hearing examiner's order, those application documents, they really outline what the agritourism activities are. It's not just events. It's also a petting zoo, farmers market, and educational activities. I'll also note that the agritourism uses, and particularly the brewery, were located central to the property, which provided some additional buffering from those surrounding residential uses. That particular part of town is very similar to Briarcliff in terms of density and uses. I'll also note that one of the factors that the hearing examiner's order found in favor of approving this COP use in conjunction with agritourism is that the brewery was using crops grown on site in that brewing process. I also reviewed the opinion for the Rad Corkscrew Winery, which is off Corkscrew. And again, the agritourism that was discussed is provided in forms of tour and education around winemaking and growing grapes. Again, the uses are buffered in the center of the property. That particular area is slightly different from this one, but it appears there's some more vacant land around it, providing additional buffer to residential uses. And again, crops grown on site are used in the production of the actual alcohol that's being sold and consumed on site. So here, there really isn't evidence that this use is agritourism. To me, it appears that these events are not really agricultural related activities. We've heard about a lot of ideas, and that's really lovely. But to be clear, this event entrance is right by the property, right by the entrance of the property. So it really eliminates the need to actually engage with the underlying agricultural operation. You come right in, you park, and you go to the event space. That whole area is buffered, so you can't even really see out visually to view the working nursery operations. The applicant also stated in their narrative, and I believe maybe it was the disruption mitigation plan, but they state that the nursery areas will actually be roped off during events. Again, tipping the scales out of agritourism and putting this more into a separate commercial use. The narrative also in part distinguishes between events and agritourism activities, and I can submit that that might just be an oversight, but I think it also just does support the fact that this isn't really directly related to that underlying commercial ag use. This isn't really consistent with being a bona fide farm either. Just because a property has an agricultural classification, it doesn't mean that the entire property is classified agricultural. It is common that, for example, a 10-acre property like this one might only get a partial classification for 5, 6, 7 acres. And I will note that the pole barn, and the event area have been improved since January 1st of this year. So the property appraiser's office hasn't actually determined that those activities have an underlying bona fide agricultural use on those lands, given the change. I'll also note that this does not promote the intent of the agritourism statute. The intention of agritourism is not just to support ag by providing a stream of revenue, but it's also by educating the general public about the agricultural industry, particularly in Florida. While this does provide an additional stream of revenue, there's really no evidence that this is being used for that traditional educational promotion of agricultural industry intent. I will also note that, again, the definition or the requirements for agritourism require that, for example, the pole barn be integral to the underlying agricultural operation. And while the applicant has stated it's primarily intended for agricultural uses, they haven't explained how. And so there's really no competent substantial evidence to support that assertion. I'll also note that that pole barn, if it was really used for an underlying bona fide agricultural purpose, it wouldn't have been required to get that commercial permit. The commercial permit is only required for structures that are primarily intended to accommodate members of the general public. And again, the barn is physically separated from nursery operations. That doesn't necessarily preclude it from being an integral operation, but it certainly doesn't help to show that this is truly agritourism. I will also note that per the AG opinion, this structure is exempt from the definition of agritourism activity, and that permit application was submitted after 2013, so that is something that should be considered. The reason that I bring this up is because the presentations and the staff report and the application documents, they don't analyze these factors and find that there is that underlying agritourism accessory use on the site, which would be a prerequisite to this particular case. There are some blanket statements that this is agritourism, but as I'll discuss in a bit, that doesn't mean that we don't address compatibility and we don't look at it. Compatibility can't be found just because there's nothing that we can do to regulate or limit the use. We need to look at that, in fact, to address substantial offsite impacts, and it wasn't really evaluated. And so those blanket statements aren't competent substantial evidence. So the next point is there isn't competent substantial evidence to demonstrate that the request is compatible with surrounding land uses or otherwise not detrimental to the public welfare. So again, the state preemption does provide that you can't prohibit, restrict, regulate, or otherwise limit an agritourism activity, but it doesn't limit the powers and the duties of the local government to address substantial offsite impacts. And I'll note that the county does have a duty to ensure compatibility between land uses per the Florida Community Planning Act. So that duty has not been addressed here. I'll give you an overview. This is one of the routes to the property that a lot of folks have been bringing up. This, well, oh, what did I do? Can you hit play on that for me?
I think you should be able to go now.
Okay. Is it this play button?
Just the, I mean, if there is a...
Oh, it doesn't. Okay, there we go.
Oh, okay, you do have a video.
So this is what 90 cars on that route would look like at any given time. And as people have mentioned, many of these roads are privately maintained easement roads. So the county defines compatible to mean those two things exhibit either a positive relationship based on fit, similarity, or reciprocity of characteristics, or a neutral relationship based on a lack of conflict or on a failure to communicate negative or harmful influences to one another. So regarding a positive land use relationship, no, I would say the fit does not work. It doesn't create a positive relationship with the surrounding uses due to increased intensity of the existing land use, additional trips on private roadways, those types of issues. It's not similar to any other uses in the surrounding area, and it doesn't provide the reciprocity of characteristics that would be mutually beneficial to the neighborhood. It's also not a neutral impact. There is actual conflict between the proposed COP use and the increased noise, light, vibration, traffic impacts, roadway maintenance obligations of many of these folks in this room, including my client, who come out and do this work without contribution from the applicant. And failure, for the same reasons, there's no failure to communicate negative or harmful influences to one another. The COP does create a major risk on these roads. Having COP does encourage more nighttime events, more noise, more light, more vibrations, more nonsense. And I will note that the staff report, I believe, says that not only is this less than 500 feet from the nearest residential use, it's actually approximately 100 feet from the nearest residential use. So again, the basis for finding compatibility here or no detriment to the public welfare is based on the fact that the county is really limited on how they can regulate these types of things. But there's just blanket statements saying that this is compatible because there's nothing we can do. There are still offsite impacts that would need to be addressed. I will also note that the COP itself is not an agritourism use. It's actually not even accessory to agritourism based on my reading of the LDC. It's in conjunction, not accessory to or subordinate to the agritourism use. The staff report also doesn't really address compatibility except for the disruption mitigation plan, which doesn't address land use issues. It provides intentions for how the venue will be operated, but the county can't enforce this. They could do, I mean, they're gonna be, open 10 to 8:30. They could in theory do 3 to 4 events a day, 7 days a week. And that it doesn't matter the time of day. It still creates noise. It still creates traffic, road impacts. And again, county does have a duty to address offsite impacts and ensure compatibility between land uses. And I'll again note that the Rad Corkscrew Winery was actually required to provide a traffic impact statement. And I would argue that that would be appropriate in this instance because traditionally COP uses are associated with fraternal clubs, restaurants, bowling alleys, things of that nature, airports. The COP doesn't generate, meaningful traffic. It doesn't generate the types of trips that would require a traffic impact statement, but here it would. It makes a big difference. And I think the fact that the winery was required to address traffic just shows that this really should have been required to address traffic as well. And again, this is not consistent with the LEAD plan because LEAD plan policy 1.4.4 does say that commercial uses are permitted in accordance with the rural category standards, but rural category says minimal non-residential land uses that are needed to serve the rural community. Things like neighborhood commercial, minor commercial as defined in the LEAD plan, the types of goods and services that you would actually need. Alcohol is not a need. Consumption on premises is not a need. So even if staff were to find that this is an agritourism use, the COP is separate. It's still a commercial use. It's still separate. And the reason it's a commercial use is because it's the sale and service of alcohol that inherently falls within commercial uses, retail, office, services. It's also not an agricultural use. So we have not seen anything from staff or the applicant that shows how COP here is a need to satisfy establishing a commercial use in the open lands designation. So with that, any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next card I have is for John Stromer.
I think everything's been said.
Okay.
So I have nothing to add. Okay, I'll get up there. I'll get up there.
Hi, good afternoon. How you doing? My name's John Stromer. I've been a resident in Briarcliff for about 40 years. Sole reason why we're out there is peace and quiet way of life. We've raised our family there. We plan on being there forever, and we love it so much that we've actually bought 3 more tracks for our family, for our kids and stuff. So when I look at this is more of a compliance thing, and what's more important, profits or our way of life? It's concerning. It really is. And so I think you got to look at these outside impacts in addition to all the compliance issues, and we're concerned about it. I got grandkids running around. I don't need drunk drivers driving around with my grandbabies, right? And they're boys, they're everywhere. I'm not going to harness them. So this is a massive mistake. Please do not do this. And then how about the property values? We've all spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? It's our life savings. And this is a massive mistake if this goes through. So that's all I'm going to say. And I want to thank everybody here for your comments. They're very good. Counselor, amazing job. So thank you very much.
Okay, the next card that I have is for Celeste. I'm going to do my best here, but thank you very much. Thank you for that assistance. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. I don't have any grand plan of what to say, but I just, there's one thing that has been mentioned several times that I just want to clarify with you. But before I say that, I just wanted to say that I actually am a big fan of agriculture and agritourism, and I think that the state of Florida is really cool for supporting that. I envision an agritourism place being a place for children to come and see where their food is grown, and for really connecting, just connecting agriculture. And I think that Briarcliff is an amazing place to be something like that. But with that said, we do have a serious issue that everyone's mentioned it, but I don't know if you've actually, I'm not really sure if you really know or have because I do know what they're talking about. And have you driven from the site south to Alico before yourself?
I have not, and I was going to remark.
I think that'd be a great
That's why
idea.
I asked for the zoomed out of the map.
You can't even believe or imagine what they're talking about until you actually drive it yourself. But the part that's crazy, because, oh, by the way, my property is at the very beginning of the private road. So when they showed all the traffic, that's going past my house. So there's like 2 properties before me, and then after that it's county. So there's 2 things. One, I just think that it's nice that they have all of this facility now, that we could have a Briarcliff community gathering, like maybe once a year. You guys can invite us over. But, I believe in community, and I think that I would love to see Briarcliff one day become just more community, where everybody's like connected, instead of being so separate. But anyway, so that would be a great place for us to get together, and we could talk about all this. But I do think that it's a little premature right now. Like, I think there's some things to be fixed. Like, one, why can't we all figure out how to request the county to make our road a county road or something? Like, I actually own the whole road, both sides of the road. And so I have 300 feet of the cars that will be driving past that. And it's like, how's it my responsibility to have to take care of this road for everything else? Like, just make it a county road. But meanwhile, I really am passionate about supporting community in a healthy way, like saying, hey, let's all live a healthy life together. And I know that alcohol is a part of our society, but I don't understand why. I mean, why can't we pretend alcohol or something? But I just don't understand the benefit of alcohol. Like, it's harming the organs in our body. And as a society, I'm just very passionate about us living a healthy lifestyle. So that's why I understand that our society is into alcohol, but I just don't see what the benefit is. I think that it'd be nice to have your operation and then have some reason why it has to be alcohol. But anyway, I'm just really wanted to point out about that road that Google, amazingly, it's kind of, to me, it's like, oh wow, Google's taking them from Alico. They're not going to come by my house. But I'm concerned about, like, I've been in an Uber before, and the Uber driver started to follow the GPS and go on that road. And I'm like, no, stay on Michael G. Rip. You do not want to go on that road. This is late at night, like 10 o'clock at night. You just go check it out. You'll see what I'm talking about. But that's where Google's taking people to if somebody's going to their site, Google will take them on this road that's not, it's not a county road, it's private. and there's nobody maintaining it. It's just a bunch of potholes. It's crazy. But why, I'm not sure why Google's taken that way, but let's work together to see if the county can help out. Pave the road, something, you know? Like, anyway, that's all I wanted to say. And hopefully we'll all have a nice world to live in and support each other.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today. The next card I have is for Jeff Shep.
I'm Holly Shep. I'm going to come up for us. And I live on 15300 North Pebble Lane. And I too have been born and raised in Southwest Florida. I've lived here my whole life. And I have a massive problem with this. And as lovely and touching as this all was, it was named after a dog. They've done some stuff in the community with foster moms, all of that. She's going to, I'm sorry, I don't know the last name, plans to raise her children here in Lee County. I don't think she's going to raise them next to a venue that she's trying to, own and do all of that. It's interesting because I do believe they tried to sell this property at one point and weren't able to, so now they're going to profit off of it. And it's just very disgusting and concerning that it's even gotten this far, quite frankly. I mean, I'm just appalled. And had we known ahead of time, this room would be packed with people. We got like maybe a week's notice on this. And from the previous presentation she just did of all of the cars on that road, that's well lit. That was a rendering of daylight. What that looks like at night, it's not a matter of if somebody gets hurt, it's when. And some people are saying that you guys have already had your mind made up. They're moving forward with this alcohol. This is in the middle of a neighborhood where people live. They don't live there. They wouldn't have their family and their children next to this. So it's just disgusting. Go get a commercial venue and do it the right way for the zoning. And I'm also curious, and I'll have to speak to the attorney that just gave us that great presentation, that if this does move forward, does it open doors for a class action? Because it sounds like it probably could. And if you guys really lived here most of your life, this is a massive FU to all of us in the community. You guys say that you want some joyous fellowship and events. Well, why do you need alcohol? So I think I've done all of that. But like I said, and also somebody brought this up, and I'm also in real estate, and someone came up to support this. You're not going to get anything for your house living next to them. The property value is going to drop tremendously. Like I said, they don't live there. This is just to make money in a venue, I believe. And she she said the word business 9 times, more than she said anything else. So I truly, truly hope that you take this into consideration, and not just that, but the safety of people getting in and out. It's going to be a problem. Thank you.
The next one I have is for Thomas Johnson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So I live on Musketeer Lane, just a few hundred feet from where this proposed venue is going to take place, and so it's definitely going to negatively impact me, probably more than anyone else. What the attorney had said before is that alcohol and agritourism don't really go together. If they did, it would be granted together. So by asking for an exception, you're pretty much saying this is not agritourism. It's basically like going to a fraternity party and say, oh, I'm going to college, because it's on a college campus. No different. So we have lived in that house for almost 10 years, and we went there to get away from traffic, to get away from noise, and for some peace and quiet. You know, it's really the only place in town that's like that. I'm an emergency room physician, so I work days, I work nights, I sleep crazy hours. To have this venue a couple hundred feet from my house is really going to prevent me from being able to sleep. So this impacts me both personally as well as professionally. And they have had parties there over the years, which we could hear from inside our house. So I'm gonna have to deal with this every weekend. It's really not fair. And as was said before, they no longer live there. They're not impacted by this at all. So they can throw these parties, do everything else, and it doesn't affect them. So I hope you'll deny the request.
Thank you. And next I have Jody Johnson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Jody Johnson, and I live at 7250 Musketeer Lane, located within 500 feet of the proposed event venue. I am here today to respectfully request this application for alcohol be denied, or at a minimum significantly revised, because it does not meet the standards required for approval under the Land Development Code. The report that was put together states that the investigators must find no apparent adverse impact on surrounding properties within 500 feet, as required by Section 34-174, parentheses B2. This will clearly have adverse impacts on our home and the surrounding neighborhood. These impacts include excessive noise, elevated traffic levels, and the real risk of impaired drivers leaving events and traveling on narrow, dark, privately maintained roads. These are not hypothetical concerns. They are predictable and unavoidable effects of allowing large gatherings in a residential area. It states in the proposal that the request will be compatible with existing and planned uses and will not be injurious to the neighborhood or detrimental to the public welfare. That's the quote. However, the addition of 100 or more vehicles per event where drivers will be impaired is simply incompatible with the low-traffic, rural residential character of our neighborhood. Our area includes children biking, pedestrians, runners, and horseback riders. These users are now being placed at risk by increased traffic, volumes of impaired drivers. This raises clear public safety issues that violate the public welfare standard. We already have numerous accidents at the light of Briarcliff Road. Adding to that, drunk drivers leaving a wedding or other events will increase that risk immensely. It's stated in Cintron's proposal that people appreciate the intention and beauty put into our plant business. If this is their intention, then let the people come to enjoy their beautiful property and experience it and have a joyous occasion there. Why do they need alcohol? Alcohol puts everyone in our neighborhood at risk. There is a potential for hazardous outcomes to all those people living near the venue when people drink and drive. They stated that they're going to have little events. We have that just down the road of Agritourism on South Pebble at the nursery. They don't have alcohol because it's agritourism. It's not a free-for-all and a nightclub where you have partying and drinkers. While the Cintrons state that they will closely monitor their events, this is something that will be impossible to do with the sheer number of people that they intend to allow at their events. Monitoring 200 people is not possible. If you decide to go through with allowing them to have alcohol, it should be mandatory that people are not allowed to drive a car to the event. I am not requesting, as the Cintrons stated in their proposal, that they will get an Uber. I'm telling you they can't drive, period. They have to have someone else drive them. The Cintrons in their proposal said that they want a family-friendly setting for celebrations. Having alcohol, which often results in overconsumption, is not family-friendly for our neighborhood. The Cintrons stated, "We are not trying to become a place of wild parties, overindulgence in substances, and harmful behavior. Such things are not true to our belief system and values, and we plan to exercise certain practices that will encourage comparable values in our clients." Are they inviting everybody that they know? It is impossible to control people at a function when you don't really know them. This will not be able to be enforced unless they only allow people that they know. The Cintron stated, "We will be consulting with an audio professional on creating the sound projection infrastructure that will be the least disruptive to neighboring properties. This acknowledges that there will be an increased sound which is not compatible with our neighborhood. My husband is a first responder. He works many nights and sleeps during the day. Excessive noise during the day will not be acceptable to his sleep schedule. The fact that they are emphasizing that the speakers will have to be moved and blocked acknowledges that there will be loud music, as my husband stated. We have heard their parties. They are loud. They're out of control. When people are drinking alcohol, there is a greater chance for excessive noise that will disrupt the neighbors. As a result of many neighbors' complaints, Brianna added to the report that the Cintrons will pay their fair share for maintaining the non-county maintained roads used for the events. Yet no formula, percentage, or cost breakdown is provided. Without this information, the term fair share is undefined and unenforceable. Not only will Skies Farm and Garden possibly generate an additional 100 vehicles per day, but they also have heavy trucks. As stated in their letter, heavy trucks cause more damage. They have a substantial number of heavy trucks that leave their premises on a daily basis, making them the culprits of what they claim they will cause an increase in wear and tear on the road. They have trucks as well as additional cars. Their fair share needs to be specified. Their impact is dramatically higher than everyone else, and the county should not approve this request without a detailed written road agreement that states their increased fair share. Although the staff report lists operating hours, there is no enforcement mechanism described. What happens if noise continues past the stated hours, as many parties have? Who responds when guests linger or when amplified music is still playing? Without enforcement procedures and penalties, the listed hours are only theoretical and provide no real protection for nearby homeowners. And the long-term property value decline that typically occurs when a commercial event venue is placed into a residential neighborhood, especially one that involves alcohol, and all the negative outcomes that will result because alcohol is now prevalent everywhere in our quiet, seclusive neighborhood. What happens if they don't follow the 24 evening events? What do we do? This proposal does not meet the standards for compatibility, safety, or protection of neighboring properties. It creates clear and measurable adverse impacts on our homes and others around us. It fails to provide critical information regarding road maintenance, enforcement, and infrastructure. And it introduces risks that simply do not belong in a residential rural area. For these reasons, I respectfully request that the county deny this application for alcohol. This venue can exist and function without alcohol. If you are going to allow the permit to pass, my family is requesting that you change the requirements to not allow cars to attend if alcohol is served. Why should my family and all those in our neighborhood be put at risk for the sake of others? Thank you for your time and consideration.
The last card I have is for Anna Zaleski.
She's not here, so she sent me her letter.
Okay.
She wrote, "We bought our land and home in Briarcliff in 2001. Yeah.
Just slow down.
Okay. This is an ideal place for us to live because we are able to have privacy, animals, and a quiet way of life for us and our kids. We recently had the unfortunate event of Fiddlesticks Gate approved to allow the entire community access into ours. That has resulted in an uptake in traffic, deterioration to our roads, the death of 2 horses and 1 dog, and also it is way less safe with more people in and out. Since it's a smaller neighborhood, we recognize our neighbors' cars and know when there's a stranger, so we feel less safe with our kids having their usual freedom in our beautiful neighborhood. The reasons stated above also compile to why we want the zoning and wedding venue request denied. Briarcliff is our home. It's our community. It should not be a source of revenue for a single family with the lives of the other homeowners that are negatively impacted. A venue that hosts up to 200 guests 7 days a week does not belong in a community where people are trying to live in peace. There will also be alcohol at this venue if it is passed. Our lives, our children's lives, the lives of our pets, and our properties are all at risk. On behalf of my family and many others in our community, we request you deny the request for a rezoning and this venue. Signed, the homeowners of 15970 Grasshopper Court, Anna Zalewski and Christina Crawfish.
Thank you. That was the last card that I had. Was there anyone else that wished to speak today? Okay. So then we will close public comment and come back. I think we need to find one of the dates, if there's an available date, to come back before I hear rebuttal, because obviously I have a lot of concerns. And I had them when I did my site visit, but I wanted to hear from the community what the actual experiences of folks that are out there is like. So I would appreciate do a full rebuttal, so the comments that you've heard and things that are weighed against the evaluation criteria that I can consider. We need to address those. Specifically, I think some shoring up of how it does meet the agritourism definition would be helpful, so that we can have some evidence in the record to support that. in the interface with the ag activity on the site. This is the only case that I'm aware of. Maybe staff is going to be able to provide some other ones. I don't know if we've had a COP with agritourism on a plant nursery before, because there is that piece, as you heard, where there's got to be some interface between the ag operation that's happening and what it is that you're proposing. There's got to be a nexus there. And I'm not familiar with one that's involved in nursery. Typically, as you heard, it's something where there's a farm operation and those things are kind of integrated into the events. So the record right now does not show that. And then demonstrate further compatibility given the nature of the use as well. I think the record to definitely be bolstered in that regard. So if you can review the dates, have you had an opportunity to do that yet?
We haven't. We talked to Brianna.
Okay, what date are you selecting?
Friday, December 19th.
That is not on the list in front of me.
We actually are good with any of the earlier dates as well. It was a question of Brianna's availability.
I give updated dates.
Okay.
Oh,
just
so
an
okay, so that
updated
was
dates.
not available.
I don't want to put me over you right now.
No, you're okay. What works for you?
Yeah. We could do that.
Can you
Or
do
that. Yeah, I think, let me check the calendar real quick. I just want to make sure I don't have like any hearings.
Okay.
We can try for it, but I think I might have to adjust my staff.
I'm going to take a break so you guys can work this out because we just get off the record. So we'll do 5 minutes. If you're not ready yet, just let Maria know. Okay, we are back on the record. Was there a date that was selected?
Yes, Wednesday, December 17th at 9 a.m.
Wednesday, December 17th at 9 a.m. Okay, and as I said, that will be the opportunity for rebuttal. So public comment has been closed. So when we come back on December 17th at 9 a.m., that will be the opportunity for the applicant and the staff to present their rebuttal and any closing comments. So they will be addressing all the comments that they heard today, in addition to what I've asked for. And again, just be mindful, the unique road network that you have here really does deserve a closer look for compatibility. I'm just going to be very frank. I've got very serious concerns about approving this. So I'll give you the opportunity to provide additional information, but we'll resume on December 17th at 9 a.m. Thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you for the comments that you provided. I appreciate it. It's very helpful in this process, and please stay well. And if I don't see you again, have very happy holidays.
Thank you.